At night, in a narrow and dark alley, a 6-year-old girl lay, with her body full of wounds and weakness due to hunger. She hadn't eaten for a full day after being beaten by several adults in the morning for stealing bread. Her body was full of wounds from the kicks of the adults. In a state of despair, the child remembered her past life. She experienced a plane crash and died. When she opened her eyes, she was surprised to find herself transformed back into her childhood self. As she looked around, books were flying everywhere, and she was in a dark room filled with glowing orbs like stars in the universe. The child wondered, "What is this? What are these books?" A novel book shone in front of her, with the title, The End of Eternal Firework. A voice told her from somewhere unknown, "Inside it is the world of a book you read before you died. You will have a new life." The child was silent upon hearing it, and her black hair suddenly slowly changed to pink. The novel book opened, emitting a light that made her soul enter the novel. The child wondered, "That's how I came, but what's my role? Could I be a beggar?" With her weak state, she felt that beggar was the perfect word to describe herself. However, she also had a memory of someone who always scolded her, which made her traumatized. But she couldn't remember who that person was. The child then smelled the aroma of delicious bread and instinctively followed the scent because she was extremely hungry. She saw some fresh bread being sold by a vendor, and her mouth watered due to her hunger. The child planned to steal again. "Previously, I made a mistake. I'll aim for the right time," the child said with sparkling eyes. When the vendor was busy, the child launched her action and quickly took a bread. Success. So easy. With joy, the child was about to eat the bread, but her action didn't go unnoticed by the vendor. The vendor lifted the child with his large hand. "You little scoundrel." The child tried to apologize with a cute attitude in front of the vendor, while saying in a spoiled tone, "Please forgive me." However, the vendor was not affected by the child's attitude and instead hit and threw her onto the street. The child fell hard and felt pain. With a feeling of despair, the child thought, "I failed again." At that moment, a woman reached out her hand and asked with concern, "Are you okay?" The child was fascinated by the woman's beauty and couldn't help but think, "Who is she? She's so beautiful." The woman looked at the child sitting on the street and muttered, "The pink hair resembles this child, the sky blue eyes, not ordinary." The child tried to listen to what the woman was saying, but it confused her. The child thought, "What kind of person is this beautiful woman? She looks like the main character in a novel." The woman smiled at the child and asked in a gentle tone, "Do you want to come with me?" The child felt scared because she was offered to go with the woman and immediately thought, could she be a slave trader? The woman seemed to realize the child's doubts and then said, "I'm not a strange person." To prove her words, the woman pulled out a luxurious watch that looked like a family crest and introduced herself. "My name is Violet Fitz, daughter of Count Fitz." The child felt familiar with the name mentioned and thought, "Violet Fitz? Brown hair, green eyes." I almost don't remember what kind of novel it was. However, when trying to think about it, her stomach growled very loudly, making her give up and collapse. "I'm hungry," the child said in a weak tone, showing that her physical needs were more urgent than questions about the woman's identity. Violet then said, "My house is full of delicious food, like meat and freshly baked cakes. But if you don't want to come, I'll have to eat everything by myself." Hearing Violet's words, the child immediately got up and without hesitation accepted Violet's offer. "I want to go," the child said. Violet glanced at the child and reached out her hand again, and the child reached out confidently. The child thought, "She's so beautiful, she can't be a slave trader." With confidence, the child followed Violet. They then rode horses to go to Violet's house. Upon arriving at the house, a large and intimidating servant was waiting for the child. "Let's start the bath right now." The child was very scared. In the bathroom, the child saw a bathtub full of bubbles and was very fascinated. The servant looked at the child gently and asked, "Do you want to play with bubbles in the bathtub?" The child agreed immediately. After the child bathed, she then wore very beautiful clothes that made her look very cute. The child smiled happily because she loved the clothes she was wearing now. Two servants smiled at the child's behavior and said, "So cute." Hearing the servant's words, the child realized her very childish behavior. The child thought, this is all because of the instincts of a small child. As an adult in her first life, she felt embarrassed because she couldn't control her current childlike instincts. At that moment, one of the servants asked the child, "Now, how about we go eat some delicious food?" The child couldn't restrain herself anymore and hurriedly clung to the servant's hand, saying with enthusiasm, "Eat. I want to eat." The child's instincts took over, and she couldn't control herself anymore. On the table, various delicious dishes were served, and the child immediately enjoyed the food voraciously. "It's very delicious," she said, enjoying every bite. Violet, who sat with her at the dining table, observed the child with a deep gaze, and suddenly she remembered a boy named Adrian, Violet's friend, who looked very similar to the child. "It seems I've just found Adrian's sibling, but didn't his sibling die after birth due to a fire?" To prove her suspicions, Violet planned to conduct a DNA test at the temple, hoping to get a definitive answer about the child's identity. After the child fell asleep after eating, Violet took the opportunity to carefully take a strand of the child's hair. The hair would be an important sample for the DNA test she would conduct later. Violet also planned to take a hair sample from Adrian when they met, so she could compare the two and determine if the child was indeed Adrian's sibling or not. The next morning, the child woke up from her sleep. "You're awake now?" Violet said while rubbing her eyes, having just woken up too. Violet smiled and said, "Good morning." The child felt scared and asked, "Am I your slave now?" Hearing that, Violet burst out laughing and said that slavery was illegal. Violet then hugged the child warmly, trying to calm her down. "You don't have to worry, I won't do that," Violet said, making the child feel more at ease. "Now I have to get ready. Today I'm going to meet my friend Adrian Aston." Hearing the name, the child was surprised and felt that the name was very unfamiliar. Adrian Aston, it seems there's a novel with a similar character name. She tried to recall all the stories and suddenly felt shocked. Pink hair, and living in a beggar's den. Wait, could it be that I'm... The child then fell onto the bed, feeling like the world was collapsing. That's impossible. She couldn't accept the possibility that she might be an important character in the novel. The novel was very exhausting for her.